Hey y'all, I'm Allie Mallon. I'm the Director of Library Services here at the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, and I just wanted to tell y'all a little bit about beginning your search for your family history. I always like to begin my presentations by kind of setting a formal definition of what it is we're going to be talking about. So according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, genealogy is the account of the descent of a person, family, or group from an ancestor or from older forms. We've all been exposed to genealogy our whole lives without even knowing it. It doesn't necessarily have to be people. It can be one thing evolving to another. It's just the lineage of a thing. So for me, the first genealogy I remember, being raised in Mississippi, I think this is probably going to be true for a lot of people, is in the Bible. In Genesis, where you hear like so and so begat so and so begat so and so. That's a very streamlined genealogy. It's often the first exposure that some people have to what genealogy is. Getting started can be a very overwhelming task, so it's important to know, to kind of have a game plan for how to lay out your information and how to get started. So the best thing to do is to write down everything you know about your family. Try and map it out in a way that makes sense to you. There is no one correct way to map out information. Talk to your family next and see if you can fill any holes or learn anything new that you didn't already know. And once you've talked to your family, just pick one or two holes or pieces of information in your family tree that you want to find to start with. It can get overwhelming to look at everything that you don't know, so pick the most important thing to you that you want to know and start there. And then you can kind of fill in from there. Once you've identified a thing or two that you want to find out about your family, think about the types of sources that might hold the information you're looking for. Sometimes you have to think creatively about this too. So if you're looking for your grandfather's mother, so your great-grandmother, you may think about the types of records on your grandfather that may hold her name rather than just starting with records about her. And then start looking. So it's easiest when you're thinking about and mapping your family tree out to start with yourself and then work your way back through generations. So you'd start with yourself and then go with your parents and work your way back through time, rather than trying to start at the beginning of the family, because that's a much harder way to approach it. This is just an example of one way to map out your family tree. This is an ancestral chart from the National Archives. This may be a little complicated. You may want one piece of paper per family member. Whatever you want to do is fine. But this is a good way to visualize holes that you have. So you may know a person's name and who they were married to, but you may not know where they died or who their children were or something like that. This can help you visualize those holes. Talking to family is a very important part of the process. Family members can remember things that may surprise you and that may not come up in your normal everyday conversation with them. So ask for names of family members and also ask for nicknames, just because sometimes people will appear as a nickname on an official record. So it's important to think that way. If that's what they most commonly went by, that's how they may appear in a census or on some other type of record about them. Ask about relationships that they had, any siblings that people can remember for the person, marriages. There may have been more than one, which can kind of complicate tracing people through time sometimes as names change and things like that. Ask about places family lived and the time period that they lived there, so that when you're kind of narrowing down your search to a location, you have a date range to work with to look for those records locally. What kind of work did they do? Did they own any land? How did couples meet? You may see a couple on a census record too that weren't necessarily married, but there may not be a marriage record, but they were married for all intents and purposes. But asking how they met can kind of help you map out other common areas that they hold, like towns that they lived in, schools they went to, things like that. Religious affiliation can provide a lot of information, especially if those religious affiliations kept records of things like baptisms, and ask about death dates and places of burial. Try to get maiden names for women. They can be very tricky to trace after or before they're married. You may have their married name, but a family member may know a maiden name. And it may be a good idea to record the conversation with your family just so that you catch all the pieces of information and you have it to go back to later. And don't be afraid to let your family members ramble when they're talking about family. They may know more than they think they do and kind of come to it in a roundabout way through rambling. You can dig a little deeper with family too, especially if you are kind of hitting a dead end with some family members. You may have to think creatively about questions to ask them to kind of jog their memory. So, for example, you can ask them about the oldest living relative they remember in their lifetimes and what it is they remember about them. Any special memories they have growing up, favorite places around town they grew up, travel, school memories, things like that. Be sure to ask if there are any family heirlooms or records that could help in your search, like a family Bible or a recipe book. A lot of people make notes in recipe books that have a lot more information than just how to cook a dish. They may have information about who gave it to them and when and things like that. As for photographs and any news clippings that your family may have, after you've talked to your family member, you can try and find documentation to support what they've said. So census records, marriage records, etc. But keep in mind that human memory is imperfect. So be willing to consider documents that don't tell the story of your family exactly like your family members remember it. It doesn't mean that that record doesn't have some valuable information for you to gain about your family. If you're not local and you can't come in, we do accept research requests. You can write us a letter or send us an email if you want us to search a record for you. Your best bet with that is to be as specific as possible. So we will assign it out to a researcher. They will spend an hour working on your request just because of the volume of requests we get. That's kind of all we can allot to each one. So try and narrow down exactly what piece of information it is you're looking for with that request, and we'll assign it out to someone to look into for you. If you just need a little guidance or someone to talk through your search with you, you can give our reference desk a call at the number on this screen, and someone's always available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, to try and help answer your questions, help you think of other ways to find the information that you're looking for, or to tell you the hard truth that maybe the record or the piece of information you're looking for just doesn't exist in the form you're looking for it in, and we can help you think of other ways to find things.